times are changing very fast. 25 years ago, all you had to really do in sales to like make a big difference and set yourself apart was get good at Excel. But now, oh my God, the technology that's out there, you better be sharp about that and know what those things power, because they're going to translate into customer experience. Generationally, there is a shift going on. Keep up with technology, especially what's going on in AI, right? Nobody's got that figured out yet. That's still emerging, right?
Right.
The dust will settle. We'll see where all of that lands.
Yeah.
But get good at it. There are a lot of tools that are easy to use, easy to learn, that will make you better, faster, and smarter than your counterpart.
Hey, everybody. Hey, welcome to the Future of Selling podcast. I appreciate you being on today. You know, in our podcast, we look at challenges and obstacles and kind of trends, anything that's impacting the sales landscape or the future of sales. And that's what we like to do. My name is Rick Smith. I'm your host today. Again, just tons of gratitude for spending some time with us today and listening in. I'm really excited about our guest that we have with us today. His name is Phil Hernandez, and we were talking just before the show began. I've never run into Phil any other place, but for some reason I feel this like kinship with him, and just by looking at his profile and looking at his picture, I don't know. So I'm really excited about the conversation today. Phil has over 2 decades of experience building and transforming go-to-market strategies and leading teams to success. So that's really where we're going to lean in today. He's currently the Global VP of Sales at Taskus. When I hear more about Taskus, and I love his LinkedIn heading, right? And I don't know if you wrote this or somebody else did, Phil, but culture builder, a master architect of organizational structure and revenue attainment. Man, that right there, when I read it, I'm like, I'm in. I am in. I cannot wait to talk to Phil and hear the story. So, Phil, welcome to the podcast, and thanks for your time.
Hey, thanks, Rick. I share the same sentiments. I woke up today. Sun's shining bright. I looked out under my shed. I have some new house guests. I've got 2 baby foxes that I didn't know were there. So, spring is here. It's time to get going, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Two baby foxes. My wife would love that. So
my wife's eating that up. I tell you what. Yeah.
Yeah. I bet. I bet. Well, we're probably going to talk about a lot of things today. I really want to focus in on building and keeping a great sales team, right? Because those are the things I think a lot about, is growth and leadership and cultural development and organizational development. But before we do that, let's jump in and talk about Taskus, which is where you're currently serving as the global VP. What is Taskus? What do they do? Just kind of give us the high level view of what you guys are about and how you're trying to serve the world.
Yeah, Taskus is an interesting company. We are about 16 years old, just went public back in 2021. We're kind of in the BPO space, but we've been a disruptor in that space. So we're still founder led. Traditional BPOs, you can think back to like the 1990s kind of cube farms, dial for dollar telemarketing. I've got a funny story about doing that down in San Antonio for a summer job. But we saw that there was a great need for us to center that industry back on a people first mentality. In the BPO space, that's really taken root. Proud to say we've disrupted that environment entirely, focusing on things like culture and enablement,
right
down to the frontline level.
Yeah. What kind of services do you guys offer? What positions are you outsourcing? Things like that.
Oh, well, we continue to try to be a disruptor in the space. So, traditionally BPOs focus a lot on like tech support and customer support, and that's still very much bread and butter.
Sure.
We really made a hard pivot over the last few years to do a lot more specialized services. So before OpenAI came and like broke AI into like a household conversation, right?
Right.
We were busy training those models for various LLMs. We've been in the AI space for a long time. We just launched our agentic AI services to help build that capability for a lot of different companies.
Okay.
And also then we branched out into other things. I'm actually formally leading the sales service line here at Taskus. So I get to help build a lot of teams for a lot of different industries across the world and help educate that this is a great solution for go-to-market professionals to use.
Right. Where so kind of geography wise, where do you guys pull from? Where your resources are? They Europe, APAC? I mean, where just or everywhere?
Oh, everywhere and growing. So, it's a great job if you like travel.
Right.
We have some great centers of excellence in the Philippines, India, of course, but then emerging markets like Latin America,
Yeah.
Greece. We're really excited about Cairo, Egypt, and South Africa, and some places like that.
Yeah.
Malaysia. In a distributed environment where you can think globally now about sourcing your workforce. There are
Right.
really interesting pockets of the world where you can actually build some great teams for a lot of different use cases.
I love that. I love what you guys are doing. And you've been there a little over a year now, correct? Is that
Mm-hmm.
the case? And
Yeah.
and then you're leading the sales and service team. So, based on your background, it sounds like you're with a great company, but also just what you're doing, you're actually going in and trying to help other companies achieve their goals through providing your services. So it's kind of got to fit for you, right? I mean, it sounds like that's a great sweet spot.
It is. I never would have thought I would have landed in this role, but it turns out like it's funny how the universe conspires against you. I may be getting a little woo woo in this conversation, right?
It's
So like a
myself. So,
little woo woo, but yeah, no yoga mats back here. Don't worry. It's funny. Like I've had this weird career journey where I've been the benefactor of having served a lot of different companies in a lot of different kinds of places across many different industries. I started my career with, a Coca-Cola bottler and consumer packaged goods.
yeah,
Then I went to a startup, and then I went to a media company and going through digital disruption in the 2010s. Then
yeah.
back to a startup, then to now I'm at a global BPO where I don't come from outsourcing, but I've used it as a customer, and now I get to kind of build the thing that I would have wanted to buy on the customer side. So
Right, right.
it's a fun role, really is.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I thought that the conversation would be interesting today, and specifically this topic of building and keeping a great sales team, right? Because I looked at your background, and you've got some stints where you've been at companies for 6, 7 years, right? And you got several of those, but you also have other stints where they're shorter, they're 18 months or 12 months, 13, whatever. And so my thinking was, gosh, here's a guy who has got expertise in building cultures, building organizations, organizational sales teams, and he's had the chance to do it multiple times. So you've had the chance to sharpen the axe time and time again, which to me just means you're getting better and better at it, right? So that really kind of got me inspired and thought, man, I definitely want to have this conversation. Um,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You looked at a lot. Look at a lot of people on LinkedIn warriors sometimes who like brag about their exits and things like that.
yeah.
Particularly with SaaS, I brag about some of my failures too. I think we can cover on some of that ground. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey.
Okay, good. Well, let me ask you this question. What is it about leading a sales team, developing a sales team, growing a sales team? And being in sales, what about that makes you come alive as a person?
Yeah, I tell people a lot. My wife is more of an ops person, so she's an operations director. You can kind of imagine what our dinner table conversations sound like.
Yeah,
But being on the sales side is interesting. I kind of tell her, look, day to day, month to month, quarter to quarter. Of course, I'm focused on process and trying to drive pipeline and those traditional things that you think of as a
yeah,
revenue leader. But
right,
really, when you look back and you have the benefit of perspective, that I might not have had when I was 27, 28, or an early VP role.
right,
You don't remember how you performed in Q2 of 2013 or
yeah,
2014 or any of those things. You think about the people that you've gone on that journey with and the impact you've had materially on people's lives. And that's really one of the greatest things about sales and go to market is that variable component is just enriching, right? Like if you can
yeah,
help somebody be really successful and see them grow and prosper in their careers,
yeah,
um, that's where I now get my reward for like that. So now that's where I obsess, right? That's where I want to create environments that foster that growth. And that means centering on those humans, making sure they have a great process driven environment to which they can execute their work properly, eliminate noise and friction, both
yeah.
in the customer side, but also at the desktop level. It's a lot of fun. I get a little passionate about it. Sometimes I get long winded, as you can tell, but
Oh, good.
um, yeah, it's great work.
Yeah. So you love the sales side of the business. Clearly, that's where you've been. But what really drives you is the people development, it sounds like, and making a difference for the team. And I'll just give you a real quick. I was in a couple of years ago, right? In a meeting, and it was a sales kickoff, right? Annual sales kickoff, and right before that, I had been to I had gone to a happy hour with a bunch of my old colleagues from a company about 10 years ago. Anyway, it brings back, you bring to your point, you don't remember what you did in Q3 of 2014, but man, you remember the people. And the thing that struck me, and maybe this resonates with you a bit, have you read that, at least part of that speech, the Man in the Arena speech? Have you ever seen? And that's what you think about, right? It's the, I don't know if it's a problem or if it's a blessing, but you don't realize it while you're going through it. But then when you're beyond it, you go, man, how much value that brought to you, the relationships that you built and things like that. So that sounds like that's really kind of what makes you come alive about being in this leadership role with me.
Yeah, it really is, Rick. And I think about, the Man in the Arena a lot often, because there are days where, quite frankly, as if you're the leader and kind of the buck stops with you,
yeah,
it's a lonely feeling sometimes. Like, right. That's where, really tapping in. I've gotten better at this over the last couple of years, really tapping into networks,
yeah,
getting into things like Pavilion and things like that. Really helps keep you centered, because sometimes you're fighting a lot of headwinds, both internally and externally. And it's staying calm in that storm is really critical.
yeah. But you mentioned a minute ago that a lot of kind of, I think your expertise has come from failures you've experienced, and you said, hey, we can talk about one if you want. Let's talk about one. I mean, what has been one of your biggest learning events, or I guess events, call it a failure, call it whatever you want, challenge, that kind of added to who you are today as a global sales leader?
Yeah, I think back probably even most recently, 2 years ago, I joined a small startup, and I look back at where they were in growth, and I assumed that we had product market fit well in hand.
Yeah.
Then you start talking to customers, you learn real quick that you don't.
Right.
And what that meant for me, and you talked a lot about like some esoteric things, but at the end of the day, when I really get back down to work, I get really tactical and very sales ops and rev ops focused.
Yeah.
I found that I had moved too fast, too hard for that org and where they were in their life cycle into process and methodology. And that wasn't wrong. It was just at the wrong time. Right. Instead, should have gotten way deeper into customers, should have got way deeper into the trenches with my salespeople, rolled up my sleeves, and really gone back and talked to the org about like, hey, we got to refine our product. We got to refine our message, find out what our ICP truly is and where we want to focus.
Yeah.
It forced a reset. We ran out of funding. Well, there's a broader story about the UAW strike. That's over a beer, not over this.
Got it. So, there's a saying a guy I like to read a lot, John Maxwell. He talks about, experience is not the best teacher. Evaluated experience is the best teacher, right? So when you look at that, what was as you evaluated kind of that situation, that failure, what did you take away from that, and what have you taken forward?
Yeah, just at that moment, I thought I was walking in with the answers. I also had a mandate to move really fast anyway. I should have trusted my instincts versus just responding to that and aligning better internally.
Yeah.
Because I knew academically all the right things. I knew walking in like I should do X, Y, and Z. But then you kind of look back after a 4-week span. You're like, oh shoot, like I didn't actually like get any of that done. I was busy solving like the problems of the day. So
yeah.
I think it's important to write down what your plan is and stick to it and have an organized way about that, and then have an accountability partner. That's probably a big thing that would have made a big impact for me.
Okay.
At that moment. Sure.
Did you have an accountability partner now?
Yes, I do. I took in a lot of my success to having a really good RevOps partner. I think I wouldn't say it's an emerging trend anymore, but I think it's finding its sea legs and becoming a little bit more commonplace in go-to-market is being backed up by a really strong sales or RevOps team.
Yeah.
So I look at some of the strongest leaders that probably came up from frontline management and are really good sales coaches and things, but maybe are a little weaker on the operations side of the fence. If you can kind of find somebody to partner with you that can cover some of your, not weaknesses, but just, areas that, you don't often think about.
Yeah.
Man, the sky's the limit for you at that point. So I'm lucky to have have that partner with me at this company now, who I worked with in prior companies as well.
Got it. And I think about accountability partner. I think about, okay, that's someone who I'm sharing my plans with, and they're sharing their plans with me probably, right, about how we're going to execute. And then on a periodic basis, weekly, monthly, whatever, we're getting back and we're saying, hey, how are you doing? Where are you at? And we're having, that's kind of what you're doing, right?
Oh, 100%. Like we've got an entire like product, roadmap ahead of it. It's services, so it's a little different, right? Like I'm building go-to-market teams on behalf of other companies.
Yeah.
So it's not like a thing or a subscription model, but
right.
Nevertheless, we have a vision and we have a shared kind of goal, and we challenge each other on certain aspects. Like I'll have a thought and be like, no, that wouldn't work. Or he'll have a thought and be like, yeah, I can't sell that. Yeah. So, it's really good to have that kind of back and forth, and trust is really the bedrock of all of that.
Yeah, completely agree. I know for me in my career, I've always been at my best when I had that partner inside the business that you're right. I trusted. I felt like we had this connection and that we could bounce ideas off of, especially in leadership. Because your point you said earlier, sometimes it gets a little bit lonely, right? You're out there and you're at the front of the pack and you're trying to make a difference, but you got to have somebody that, or at least I do. And it sounds like you do, somebody that you can actually bounce ideas off of and help you make those decisions and hold you accountable. So let's say, you've been in a couple of times, you've come into new companies. What's the first thing that you're looking at when building a high performing, sales team from scratch? What comes to mind? What are the, top 2, 3, 5, whatever it may be?
Yeah, let me give you a few then, because I don't know what the order is. More so, it's a cacophony, right? Like,
right? Yeah,
it's hard to turn off when your head's hitting the pillow when you're in build mode. But usually, what I'm looking for is where's the friction, right? I'm looking at the customer journey, I'm looking at the process, I'm looking at gaps in talent, and I'm asking, where are the pain points, where are the friction points that we can go solve for quickly, especially at the customer level. Typically, when you kind of look at where your bow tie is, for instance, if you want to look at revenue architecture and those kinds of models from winning by design and whatnot, typically it's at the front end of the pipeline, where you're trying to get a go-to-market message out there and you're talking about leads and how do you convert leads to meetings and things like that. Yeah. Usually I find a lot of inefficiency there first. And really, I mean, when you think about it, that's your first impression to your ICP and your addressable market. You gotta nail that really well, right?
Yeah.
And usually the conversion part is an outcome of having some really good, well-defined methodology around that.
Okay.
But then you have to solve for the other side too, really quickly. And that might not be so apparent when you're early stage and you've got a handful of customers and you have like this direct, like founder-led sales motion sometimes. When you start to scale, you really got to get buttoned up around your customer success org, your account management org, and make sure you're delivering on that value. Yeah. Otherwise, word on the street's going to get around, and you've got to protect your rep. So, so there's a big process in there. I have a framework for how I attack that, that I've developed that's built on a lot of these classic design models.
Okay.
It really centers around people, process, even the platforms that you use now. That's a real critical component in the tech-enabled space because customers expect more. Really driving the productivity and the performance that you're expecting. Do you really have a clear crystal vision on what are the KPIs that matter? Yeah. Do you have North Star KPIs defined, or are you just looking at dashboards to look at dashboards and vanity metrics, right?
Yeah. I feel like if I've got a clear target, I clearly know what I'm trying to achieve, right? And I'm chief customer officer at Concur, right? So what I think about is gross retention, net retention, CSAT, NPS, but as long as I have to clearly define those targets, and when I do, I feel like I have the best chance for success. The worst thing is an unclear target, and we're throwing effort at something, and we don't know why we're trying to get there. I completely agree. You mentioned one of the things you mentioned there, and kind of things you look at is talent gaps. So tell me this: tell us about your hiring philosophy. Going into a new situation, is it newbie versus experienced? Is it specific competencies you're looking for? And also maybe what are some of the red flags that that you're conscious of as you go through that hiring process?
Yeah, really critical in my day to day right now to take some of those learnings and bring them to Taskus too, because for outsourcing, one of the key components that someone's looking at is: do you have a really great recruiting framework? Do you have a really clear, defined market that you can hire good people in? And sometimes companies don't always have that,
Yeah.
Rupert. So that's when I can kind of pull my consultant hat back on and like say, no, in my experience, you need someone, who's done this before, that before. Sometimes it's industry knowledge, but not always. There are some great tools out there that help you evaluate talent. For us, we have Harvard, which allows us to look at language proficiencies, but it also allows you to kind of track things objectively in some of those what people would usually call soft skills like grit, determination, what are their motivational purposes. I think it's really good to take a lot of time and sit around who that human is, not just what they've done.
Yeah.
Because you can look at a resume and get fooled. Really, look, we're hiring salespeople. These are folks that are trained to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you've got to be good at digging in, right? And you can't just hire a resume. You've got to hire that human for that task that's going to execute properly.
Yeah.
Make sure they have clear lines of sight on what you expect from them before they even walk in that door.
Okay. Yeah, familiar with Harvard. Actually, back in the day, I used to work for a behavioral assessment company, and so I've got some familiarity with that. So it sounds like you're a big proponent of using assessments, right, before hiring, just because you want to get to know the person.
Yes.
Which is great, not just the experience. And then clear expectations. Okay, got it. What are the red flags you look for in making a hiring decision?
Yeah, I think the red flags appear once you go a layer deeper in your line of questioning, right?
Okay.
So typically your typical interviews are things you kind of Google your interview questions a little bit. You kind of have a list or two.
Yeah.
Then when you really peel back and ask what they really contributed to that project, let's say they put on their resume that, they worked on a project and they generated $50 billion. Well, what was their role in that?
Yeah.
Were they just there? Were they present? Did they just field the calls, or did they have like a driving purpose, right? Depends on what you're hiring them for. I mean, it can be just fine if they just had a participatory role, right? But if, you're trying to find somebody who can drive a project or drive a task or can see something through, yeah, you want to go and ask a little bit more in-depth questions and not just take their word for it or the sales story that they've said because they practiced that interview line about 5 or 6 times.
Right.
Really get under this, really dive deeper into what their role was, find out if they had a real key role in that. That's a red flag that appears really quickly. It's easy to do. You can kind of understand, is this person just talking the talk or can they walk the walk?
Okay, gotcha. So I picked up 3 things out of that. Definitely look at experience. It's important, but it actually doesn't have to be in the same industry, right? Could be a different industry. Know the human, understand the human. Use an assessment tool if you possibly can, and then make sure that for the red flag piece, just go deeper, right? Don't. And I've been in those interviews before, and I've done them right where I walked out of an interview and I thought, man, I took that surface answer instead of digging down and making sure there was actually some meat to that answer. So if you want to, so red flags, find them by just going deeper in the interview process, right?
Yes.
Got it.
I think the last thing I would do, I mean, that's probably an hour-long conversation in of itself, right? But like the last thing I would say, make sure that person's excited for your job.
Yeah.
Make sure that person's excited about your company and they really want it, right? You can kind of tell if they're just kind of going through the motions and just hoping to get a job. I want somebody to really want this thing, because if they come in the door, they're going to come in guns blazing, and that's a kind of spirit.
Yeah. Well, so I'm glad you said that, because the next thing I wanted to ask you about, and because it feeds into this idea of culture, right? Culture is so critical to the success, probably, I think, of any team, right? In any company. But I don't know, maybe it's even more so with the sales team, because there's such an emotional piece that goes with that. So what's your approach to creating a cohesive culture and one in which people thrive and succeed?
Yeah, I think, culture has to be the bedrock. You said it really well. It has to be the bedrock by which you build things. And sometimes if you're a new leader or even an existing leader, you have to take those moments with your team to form and make sure they are all aligned to the why about what they're doing. Sometimes, you walk into some go-to-market teams, especially large ones, right? They have scope creep. And this is where silos come into play, right? Well, you're on the SDR team, and then there's the AE team, and there's the customer success team, right?
Right.
You're all meant to serve the holistic view of that customer journey and that company's mission to serve those markets, right? But if you think about just your little segment of it, and you don't think about like, why am I doing this? Why am I asking these discovery questions?
Yeah.
Why am I making sure I have good handoff notes to onboarding team, right? Like, these are where things go off the rails really quickly. So really one core fundamental about building culture is making sure everybody's aligned to the mission,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
have to take time out to do that vision. And you might have to do that over and over and over and over again, right?
Right. Yeah.
What I love about my company right now, and I haven't seen this in any other company, they always talk about values. Almost
Right.
every company talks about their goals and their vision and their mission.
Yeah.
This one's actually taking its work. Like every single meeting we do core value nominations. And we talk about people who have helped us in the org and
Yeah.
how that's aligned to things that we're trying to create for customer experience mission, right? So like really live it, right?
Yeah.
You have to take that seriously.
In my team, we do an exercise. It's a core values exercise, right? Where you have weekly staff meetings, right? One of those weekly staff meetings are dedicated to our company values, and it's a really simple exercise, right? But it's always fun because it's also an opportunity to highlight someone that they've done well. But we ask them to do two things. One, look at our company values and our team values, and identify another person on the team and tell us what value you saw, you witnessed or observed them executing or living out in the past month, and then tell us how it impacted you or impacted the team or impacted a client. And then that's number one. And then, by the way, number two is now tell us what value you're working on this month and what you're going to do about that. So it sounds similar to what you guys are doing, but it's kind of a cool process, right? Because you can, to your point, you can talk about values, they can hang on a wall, you can talk about them once a year at the company meeting. But if you don't revisit those things on a consistent basis, they're not real. They don't live, So, yeah. So anyway, that's cool. What you guys are doing. Anything else to think about on the culture side, other than just the emphasis on values?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I kind of to tie back to some other points earlier in the conversation, it's really important to take your work seriously in terms of building a good environment for them to work in too, because too often we kind of like hire a salesperson, hire some customer success teams and expect them to just kind of know and go figure it out. Right.
Yeah.
Not the best approach, right? Like
Okay.
it's really important depending on the stage of growth in your company, but pretty early on, frankly, like
Yeah.
to start building in some processes and some repeatable, measurable practices. And this is where RevOps can really help you a lot, right? And institute those and A/B test and challenge and find out, like from a data-driven perspective, what's working, what messaging is going forward. Tie in marketing, get the whole go-to-market organization aligned to that. Have those monthly meetings where it's like, here's what we learned. Here's the things that are working really well. We want to double down on. Here's the things we need to stop doing and figure something else out, right?
Yeah.
And invite all those players together, and that helps centralize things in terms of, it can't just be your ideas all the time.
Right. Yeah. I love it. So part of culture then for you guys is making sure that you're aligning across the entire go-to-market team on all things, all initiatives, right?
1,000%. You can do the core value noms and all that stuff, but then they have to go back to their desk, and if you're just kind of giving them some sloppy tools and no training and no investment of your time and your coaching, like it just strikes as hollow, right? So like the follow through is about, all right, let's take these ideas and these foundational truths. Now let's live into them and through the work, right? Live through the work into your call. That next call with the customer is because you have an anchor from which to drive on, right? Be excited about that next call. I don't care if somebody told you no. Next, right?
Let's go. Take it one step further. What's your approach to developing your team? Because I think that's where you're going. Right? Talked about culture, talked about values, talked about process, and making sure kind of the standards are in place, right, to guide that behavior and activity. Then how do you coach them? What's your approach to coaching and developing people?
Yeah, so much of it is just giving them the time, right, and taking your one-on-ones seriously and honor them. There's a lot of playbooks for that that you can go out there. A lot of books been written about this, but like you have to have it in your heart, right? You either believe in it or you don't, and it's going to define you as a leader, frankly.
Yeah.
Right? Those one-on-ones are not just like a go through the motion thing. Stop thinking of them that way. They are critical moments in the development of your people who are you are nothing without, right?
Yeah.
Those are key moments for them to touch base with you, tell them what's, have that safe space, tell them what hurts, learn from what the market's telling you through them, because
Yeah.
you've got to be connected to the customer too.
Yeah.
And hear the voice of the customer through them, through their lens. Like they might be like, oh, our pricing is terrible. You go talk to a customer, oh, it wasn't your price. It's like your sales rep didn't call.
Right.
You gotta be wise about
Yeah.
what you're hearing and how you use that information. Don't just take it as rote, right? But those key moments are really critical to nail, number one. Number two, make sure that you have either money or something set aside to invest in their continual development, right? Now, that might not just be sharpening the axe on their sales skills. Oftentimes, that's a place to start, but you can invest in them as a human too. One of the things that I benefited from early in my career was when I was with a bottler out in Utah and Coca-Cola and I fought this thing kicking and screaming because I don't like being, psychiatry blasted, but they would take their leadership and they put them down into a leadership development camp.
Okay.
Down in Texas, and it had like literally no coursework devoted to business. It was all about who you are, how you take responsibility, empowering you, understanding what you can do if you really set your mind to something, how to work with teams. It was almost like a boot camp. Like it broke you down for a couple of days to build you up, and man, you come out of that thing a transformed human, and you understand that it's not just about your skill set and what you can put down on that resume. It's about who you are.
Yeah.
And who you are will define that career. Like I look down at that moment in my past, and I can see the wake that left, and kind of how I approach things from every step in my journey so far.
Yeah. I love that. And I probably said I love that too many times, but I do. I love that, right? Because you're right. Here's the deal. Everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yes.
Period. Right.
Yes.
If you've got poor leadership in place, guarantee you're going to have poor outcomes. Mm-hmm. You've got great leadership in place, even with the challenges and obstacles of the economy or anything else, you're going to get there eventually, right? So everything rises and falls on leadership. And what I love is the fact that the training you did, again, it wasn't company specific, right? It was leadership specific. And it's such a difference right there, and such a difference maker. Was there anything like was there maybe one thing that you took from that? You probably took a bunch of things, but you think about that training. What was maybe one thing that really stood out more than all the rest?
That there is an I in team, and you can be a difference maker, not just to yourself internally, but those around you. And it was kind of like on the airplane where you have to take the oxygen mask down for yourself first before you can help others.
Yeah.
So really care about yourself. Make sure you're putting yourself in a priority. Thinking about what we talk about, it gets lonely.
Yeah.
You got to watch your mental health and check that conversation in your head when it's telling you like maybe you're having a moment of like imposter syndrome, right? Like we've all had that. Maybe it's like, oh, I just don't have it in me today. You know what? Give yourself that allowance. Not every day is going to be a good day, and have the wisdom and wherewithal to know when you should check out at 2 p.m. and go for a walk and come back and reset. You do not have to go bell to bell in this world anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody's checking your punch card at the factory.
Right.
If you do, they are, maybe you get out of that environment.
Great point. The last question around the coaching development. Are you still in a growth mode yourself? I mean, are you still, how do you continue to develop yourself and grow yourself and become better at your craft?
Yeah, I think that's till the day I die, I better be, right. Shawshank Redemption, one of my favorite quotes from that movie, right, is you get busy living or you get busy dying, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Take the time in yourself, invest. I try to pick up new hobbies, learn guitar, learn to fly fish, learn to ski, learn to do this. Like, it's funny the parallels you have when you're learning.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
And then you could say, oh, if I applied this to my day job,
right.
I feel better about the journey I'm going through. So,
got it. Do you have any kind of specific leadership framework that you follow? I mean, is that you mentioned a couple of things or several things right now. Do you have a 1 through 3 or 1 through 5? Here's what it means to be a leader, or not?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you have to have compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
Right? So that's been a theme here in this conversation. But second of all, you actually do have to have some hard skills. So it can't just be all rah rah all the time. You've really got to be able to sharpen your axe about practical application.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of learning materials out there. Shame on you if you're not, right? Get back to it. Like go get certified, go get in those pavilion courses, go back to school, go.
Yeah.
There was not a lot. I mean, maybe I'm dating myself. I'm, only a senior millennial, but like there weren't a lot of sales schools out there giving you a degree in like professional sales.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of resources now that you can get into that are really good trainings. Also, be careful of who you learn from. It's not enough to like go on LinkedIn and like read a bunch of posts and like just take some notes from some gurus, right? Um, really get practical, really get tactical, sit down and do the work. Make sure you have one of my secret sauce was make sure you get a foot in the camp of RevOps course, right? It's one thing to coach as a leader, but as you come up, you're going to have to pull in some different talents and some new skill sets, right? First time CROs can probably all relate like, oh, all of a sudden you got to learn how to talk to a boardroom. Now you have to know some things about finance and running a P&L, right?
Right.
Like, these are skills that you can sharpen for yourself so that will project you into that next echelon if you're growth minded in your career.
Got
That's
it.
the second thing. I think the third thing is just make sure you learn to put away that Superman cape, and you're not a hero. Nobody's expecting you to be. Align with your leaders. If you're a CRO, get with your CEO often. Get with
Yeah.
the chief product officer. Make sure you're aligned with your CFO, and you are being that voice of alignment together as a team. You
Right.
said it earlier. And look, I have 20 different sales teams for 20 different companies that I have to like be kind of like give some oversight strategically to. And
Yeah.
that's the most common theme. If you have a bad leader driving at any level of your organization, that thing will fail.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Get good at leadership, but it starts at the top down for sure. If you can't demonstrate that at your rank, how can you expect that to happen at the front line?
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Completely agree with you. As you look forward, I know we're kind of getting close to the end of our time, but as you look forward into the future, do you see certain skill sets, certain mindset, maybe certain mindset, beliefs or whatever, that are going to be needed to be a successful seller in the future? Anything changing there?
Yeah, number one, I think, times are changing very fast. 25 years ago, all you had to really do in sales to like make a big difference and set yourself apart was get good at Excel. Like
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I sat in front of an old sales team that's been there for 20 years doing it a certain way and like did some fancy Excel formulas and, all of a sudden like, whoa. But
Yeah.
now, oh my God, the technology that's out there, you better be sharp about that and know what those things power because they're going to translate into the customer experience.
Yeah.
And the future buyers think about this. I'm almost 44. I'm a senior
Okay.
millennial. Generationally, there is a shift going on where now your buyers and decision makers are built from that technology revolution that happened in the 90s. And
Right.
they expect you to keep up with that and to give them solutions for their buyer's journey that are different than just having coffee or playing golf, right? I think there's places for that, and that's all really well and great. I don't think that's dead by any stretch. In some ways, you can be antithetical.
Yeah.
But keep up with technology, especially what's going on in AI, right? Nobody's got that figured out yet. I don't care. I'm sorry. That's still emerging, right? The
Right.
dust will settle. We'll see where all of that lands.
Yeah.
But get good at it. There are a lot of tools that are easy to use, easy to learn, that will make you better, faster, and smarter than your counterparts. And those reps are going to be the reps of the future that are going to lead future teams. Is those who can take advantage of those learnings now, invest in themselves.
Right.
7 o'clock, pour yourself a glass of wine, have a beer, take an AI course, and then start to use that practically, and then teach others around you. That's another thing to look at leaders like.
Influence.
Yeah, influence. I can't tell you how many salespeople I promoted, not because of their KPIs, but because they made an impact around them on their teams.
Right.
Those are leaders, right? And
Yeah.
if they are leaders that have learned technology and teaching other people, boy, you've got a shooting star on your hands.
So I wrote down a couple of things there. So one, know the technology, stay up on the technology, don't fall behind. We're just in a world where you can't do that, right? Especially AI. Grow yourself, which kind of is a theme we've talked about, for the last several minutes, right? Just continually in the process of becoming. Third is just grow your influence, right? Teach others what you're learning. Don't be afraid to kind of push yourself out there in the stretch zone. Maybe a little bit of vulnerability there, right? But if you're going to lead, you're always going to be vulnerable. You're always going to be in a place of you know, well, vulnerability. I don't know what else to say other than that. So, okay, good deal. You mentioned AI, and you're right. I agree with you. We don't know yet how it's going to turn out. What's the impact of it so far? What do you see in the future? The impact of AI specifically on leading teams, growing teams, organizationally. How does that come into the whole lead and grow a successful team?
It's an interesting question. It's one we're all talking about. I'm lucky to be at a company that has been at the forefront of this and has been using these tools for a bit. So I can provide a little bit of insight for a minute. Right now, the tools that are available are, everybody's talking about, will it replace? Maybe. I don't care about that right now, right? What I care about is how can I uplift the people around me using those tools and making them more efficient. So for instance, when I'm launching a wave of new hires, right, in the Philippines or Colombia, what have you, right? We've been using AI tools to do role play and training,
Mm-hmm.
because it better mimics a customer engagement rather than having them cut their teeth on those leads that you fought really hard for in marketing to
Right.
do, right? So we've been using it from that perspective with great results, helps shorten that ramp time. Every sales team I've ever led or built from scratch, certainly any new hire, has a ramp time, right? If you can shorten that and get them speed to proficiency, that's one great use of AI. The other great use of AI is help automate some of like the task-driven stuff, right? Before AI, we've had tools that are like meant to do that, right? Like sales sequencers, outreaches, and calls and things of that nature, right? But in this new AI-driven world, it actually helps you offload some of those things that are taking you away from the customer and helps you get in front of the customer more.
Okay.
And making you sharper and better and giving you, it's almost like an accountability partner, right? Like I have Gemini tools, I've got Zoom, everything's got AI pixie dust all over it right now. Get familiar with those.
Yeah.
And then I'm jumping from like 5 different applications, right? And they all have an AI thing attached to it. If I can learn how to use their thing uniquely, I can get them more out of that tool. Makes
Right.
me sharper, better, faster, and speed is your ally in go to market these days.
Yeah.
Get into that market, get in those customer conversations as fast as you can. AI helps you with speed right now. And that's a huge, huge game changer for your go-to-market motion.
Okay, so I always like to end with a few takeaways, because I put myself in the place of a listener and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and the ones I like always give me a couple of takeaways at the end of it. What are 3 key takeaways? If somebody's listening to this podcast today, they are a new sales leader or they're walking into a new situation. What are the top 3 things you'd say? Think about this, think about that, do the other. And you've talked about a lot today, but if you can summarize it down into 3 key takeaways for someone in that situation.
Yeah. For a new sales leader, for sure, look to see where you can partner to go faster and get some alliances, right? If you just took a new job and you have 2 weeks till your start date, you start working now. Right? You start making your phone calls now, you start building your networks, and you find out who are those companies and who are those resources that you can do to help you build pieces of your team faster. Because look, the average life cycle of a VP of sales, particularly new VPs of sales, is like 18 months.
Yeah.
You're out of time from the jump.
Yeah.
Right.
Early.
Early, right? So you want to start putting points on the board really, really quickly,
Yeah.
right? You don't have time to figure out where the bathrooms are. You want to get to work, center yourself around that customer. So that's one. Maybe that's salespeople from your past you're going to pull through forward. That's always a sign of a good leader if they've got people that are going to follow them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Number 2, I would say stay educated, right? It's so easy to get sucked into the day-to-day grind and today's firefighting drill and things like that. Carve out the time to learn, to experience, to take those demo calls from those SDRs. I got 8 of them a day. I can't take them all, but sometimes there's one that you ought to take an hour, put a block in your calendar, say on Friday at 8 a.m., I am going to set aside time every week to take a demo because I need to learn. Whether I do something with that or not,
Right.
look, it doesn't take any effort to ignore a phone call, but
Yeah.
take time to learn. Number 3, make sure you're aligned internally to get your goals done. Do not work in a silo. right?
Yeah.
So externally, yes, lots of partners, lots of things you can use, lots of people that you can have to come with you. But internally, you've got to make sure you're aligned in vision with your C-suite. You've got to make sure you're aligned in vision with your CRO, and that you're working transparently too, right? Try not to build alone. Try to be very in your face about everything you're doing, and you'll start to get resources internally. You're not going to win if you're having an abrasive relationship with your marketing person or trying to fight for budget line items with your CFO. Like, these are the worst situations that drag you away from the customer,
Yeah.
create internal strife, and ultimately sour your culture. And it's over before you know it. So keep those three things. Those things are three critical areas I think new leaders have to be mindful
Okay.
of.
I'm going to repeat them. Partner and go faster, right? Where you can, partner to go faster. Man, I love that statement. Stay educated. And I think the idea, I didn't, at first I was thinking about stay educated about, kind of your current situation, but you're saying stay educated, take calls, take demos from companies outside of your company and just learn what they're doing. And such a practical, hey, Friday at 2 p.m. or Friday at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m., I'm going to take a call every week. Whatever it is, I'm just going to set something up and watch a demo and get smarter. Right. That's great. And then align internally. Don't work in a silo. So align with the C-suite, align with marketing and RevOps and, everyone, but don't work alone. Be transparent. Don't work alone. So build that connection internally. That's what I took away. So,
100%.
incredible. Phil, thank you so much for the time today. Appreciate you kind of sharing your wisdom and your experience, and I think the great conversation. So thanks a bunch.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Rick. This was a lot of fun. I love talking about this stuff. And I'm pretty easy to find. If anybody wants to connect me on LinkedIn, I will take a demo call every now and then. So.
You may have just set yourself up, right? You may have just done that. Yeah, and we'll make sure we get your LinkedIn and how to contact you in the show notes, as well as Taskus. Appreciate you being here, and have a great rest of the day. And by the way, I look forward to staying connected with you going forward.
100% guarantee it, Rick. So nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, you too. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.